and then from January 3rd to the 16th, that was a very active, very significant combat area situation for you. The other part of the map shows the Battle of Germany from there on across the Rhine and over to Torgau, where eventually that's on the Elbe River, where you waited for the Russians to to come. Now, for those of our viewers not highly familiar with the Battle of the Bulge, it was one of the greatest battles in the history of our country, really. And in that 1 month period, there were 90,000 U.S. casualties and 20,000 soldiers killed during that period of time.
Well, when they first sent me over to Europe, we landed in France, Le Havre, France. And I still wasn't assigned to anybody at that time, so they put us in replacement camps there. And me and my 3 buddies stuck close together, and they took us up to a place in Warriem, Belgium, one night. And that's where we knew we were on our way up to combat. And the 84th Division at that time was located in the Siegfried Line, where there were a lot of German pillboxes, and the 84th Division had lost a lot of men. And they needed replacements. And me and my buddies were assigned to the 84th Division in the Siegfried Line. And when we got up there, we were separated a little bit. One of my buddies, Siegfried Grunwald, who was born in Germany, but he was in the Army with me, and I were sent to the A Company of the 84th Division. And this other friend of mine from New York, he was put in D Company. And the other friend of mine, Morrison Gillette, who was from Minneapolis, Minnesota, he was put in Engineer Division of the 84th Division. So we all got separated. And we all made it through the war except one of us. And that's a time when the bulge happened. The Germans had broken through in the bulge, and the U.S. Army had to send quite a few divisions down to the bulge to stop the advance of the Germans, because they were headed for Paris. And the 84th Division was one of the divisions that was sent down. So we got on, after one day in the Siegfried Line area, Grunwald and I were all put on trucks with the rest of the division, and we traveled the next day down to the Ardennes, which is where the Battle of Bulge was fought. And at Ardennes, we were sent to March, Belgium. The Germans occupied March, Belgium, and we had to, that was the first action we had. We had to get the Germans out of March. And we stopped them in March. And that's where we started pushing them back, along with several other divisions. I forget what the other divisions were. But from then on, we were in a bulge, and there was nothing but snow, sometimes 2 foot deep, and had to dig foxholes at night to sleep in the foxholes. And it was hard to get through the first 6 inches of ground because it was frozen. And the tankers used to lend us equipment to get our foxholes started. And we'd have to sleep out at nights. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the guys were coming up with frozen feet. Their feet would be frozen. They'd have to be sent back to the hospital the next morning. I never had frozen feet. I don't know why. My feet are always cold anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I never got frozen feet, but my buddy my foxhole buddy Grunwald, he was sent back frozen feet, and I didn't see him for a couple of days. But he joined us again, and he joined me again, and we had to do a lot of combat in the next 8 or 10 days. But anyway, we stopped the Germans in their advance, and eventually we were pushing them right back out of the bulge.
Yes, I believe on February the 23rd, you after you were heading towards the Rhine, you crossed the Ruhr River at Linitz, Germany. That was February 23rd. So that was after the bulge, and you're now on your way to the Battle of Germany, really.
Yeah, we were sent back to, first we were sent back to Prumern,
right.
Germany. And Prumern was a city about 3 miles from the Elbe River, and it was leveled by the Air Force. So there was no houses standing in Prumern. So we lived in cellars for about a week. And like I say, we were only 3 miles from the Ruhr River, not the Elbe,
right?
The Ruhr River. And the Ruhr River wasn't a very big river, but we had that in our duty to cross it in a few days. But the Germans, meanwhile, flooded the river. Up north in around Holland, they decided to flood the Ruhr River to not to give us an easy job coming across. So our crossing was postponed for a couple of weeks, and we had to stay in Prumern. And one day, we had to remove our identification. They didn't want patches on our arms, so they didn't want the Germans to know who was on the other side of the river. So we had to remove all our patches, keep secrecy of who was opposite the Germans there. And then one day, a little German plane comes flying over and drops 1,000 leaflets out, floating down through the air. And I went out and got one. I was going to send it home to my wife after I read what was on it. It said, "Welcome, Rail Splitters." That was the name of the 84th Infantry Division, the Rail Splitter. "Welcome, Rail Splitter. We will be waiting on the other side of the Ruhr River for you with a welcoming for you." And
Herb, we've identified a number of different experiences that you have. It would be very difficult to go across the entire thing. But we've listed 5 or 6 different experiences that you had, and most of these were all from this point on, from across the Ruhr. The first one was the first time that you came face to face with a German soldier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was in a place called Petit Talus. Petit Talus, T-I-I-L-L-E-S.
Right.
And we had been sent there to take a crossroads, make sure the crossroads there that was going further into Germany was clear, and that there weren't any Germans around there. If there were, we had to get them out of there, because there was a convoy coming through the next day, trucks, soldiers, tanks, and they wanted to make sure they could get through Petit Talus. So as we were on a truck, and the truck let us off right outside Petit Talus. And there was a lot of trees across the highway anyway, that the truck couldn't get us past any further. And the trees had been felled by they put something in the trees to blow up dynamite, TNT.
Okay.
And they had been dropped on the highway to stop our gang from coming through. So we had to detruck, and we went down the highway a little bit, and our captain said, "This is where we leave the highway and we go into the forest on the side of the road." So we went off on the side of the road, and there was a big barn there. No animals in it. Great big thick walls, 1.5 feet thick. No windows in them, and no doors.